The records say the disappearances began in late autumn of 1894. A quiet farming town, 30 miles from the nearest railway, surrounded by pine forests that blocked the horizon. The people there lived slow lives. They worked the fields. They prayed on Sundays. They never traveled far. And yet, within 5 weeks, 6 people vanished. 3 children, 2 young men, 1 elderly woman. No tracks, no blood, no bodies. The sheriff called them accidents. Wolves, he said. Maybe the river. The townsfolk nodded, because there was nothing else to say. But their fear hid behind their silence. Mothers walked their children to school. Men carried lanterns home. Doors locked earlier. Curtains stayed closed even during daylight. Only one man refused to accept the river, the wolves, or the sheriff's excuses. His name was Father Elijah Horton, 60 years old, thin and stooped. A priest known for his gentle voice and his habit of pausing before he spoke, as if choosing every word with care. He had lived in the town for 28 years. He had buried their dead. He had baptized their babies. He knew every family by name, and he had seen enough life to know when something was wrong. He told the sheriff privately that wolves did not drag people away without leaving tracks. He said the river never took 6 in one season. The sheriff told him to let it go. Let the town settle. Let winter pass. But Father Horton did not sleep that winter. Every night he heard something outside the rectory. Not footsteps, not voices. A faint sound like breath drawn through wood. Like someone standing beside the window, close enough to fog the glass. He prayed, but prayer did not close his ears. The 7th disappearance happened on the first night of frost. A girl named Emily, 7 years old, last seen walking home with her older brother. He turned around once to pick up a fallen lunch tin. When he looked up, Emily was gone. The boy said he heard nothing, saw nothing. He only felt a cold air move past him. Father Horton closed the church the next morning. No sermon, no candles, no choir. He stood in the front pew and read Emily's name again and again. He said nothing to the sheriff, nothing to the parents. He waited until nightfall. Then he followed the sound. It came from behind the church, near the old trees where roots rose above the earth like black veins. The deeper he walked into the woods, the clearer the sound became. A slow, uneven rhythm. Like breath, like something sleeping, or pretending to sleep. He carried a lantern. He reached the roots of the oldest tree in the forest. A tree with a trunk wider than a house. Its roots bent upward, forming an arch that hid something dark beneath it. A patch of earth that looked disturbed. Father Horton knelt, pressed his hand on the soil. It shifted beneath his fingers. He dug with his hands, pushing aside the cold dirt. After a few minutes, his lantern light touched something metallic. A latch. He stared at it. The forest held its breath. He pulled the latch. A wooden door opened upward with a long, low groan. The air that rose from inside was colder than winter. It smelled of stone and soil, and something else he could not name. He lifted the lantern, held it above the opening, and looked down. A staircase descended into the darkness. Father Horton hesitated only once. Then he stepped inside. The stairs creaked beneath his boots. He lowered the lantern with each step. The deeper he went, the colder it grew. When he reached the bottom, he stood in a stone room no larger than a cottage kitchen. The walls were lined with shelves, but not shelves for tools or food. Bodies, standing upright, pressed against the stone, their eyes open. He froze. His breath caught in his throat. He recognized them. All 6 of the missing stood there. The children, the men, the old woman. Their eyes glistened in the lantern light. Their lips were pale. Their skin was gray. But their bodies looked whole, untouched, preserved, as if they had been stopped in time. Father Horton stepped closer. His lantern shook. He whispered the girl's name, Emily. Her eyes shifted. He stumbled back, hitting the opposite wall. The lantern almost fell from his hand. Emily's head moved, slow, jerky, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Her lips parted. A sound escaped her throat. Not a word, a faint hiss. Breath against stone. He stepped closer again, unable to look away. Emily's fingers twitched. Her hair brushed her cheek as her head tilted. Her eyes focused on him with horrible clarity. He whispered, "Emily, can you hear me?" Her mouth opened wider. A crackle of air escaped her lungs. Her chest did not rise or fall. She did not breathe, but she was aware. Every body on the wall seemed to turn toward him. The children, the men, the old woman. Their eyes followed him. Father Horton realized something too late. They were alive. Not living, but alive. Suspended. Held. Preserved by something in the cellar. Something that wanted them still. Something that would not let them return. A sound came from the darkness behind the bodies. A scrape. A slow shift of something large. He lifted the lantern, but the light reached only halfway across the room. Beyond the glow, he heard breath. Heavy, wet, not human. He stepped backward. His back hit the wooden stairs. Then the lantern flickered. In that brief dimming, he saw it. A shape in the far corner. Taller than a man. Thin. Bent, its arms long enough to touch the ground. Its head turned toward the bodies, watching them, guarding them. When the lantern brightened again, the creature did not move. But Father Horton felt its attention on him. A cold wave pressed against his chest. He climbed the stairs. He did not run. He forced himself not to. He felt that if he ran, the thing would follow, or stop him. When he reached the top, he pulled the door shut. He covered it with soil. He pressed the lantern to his chest and walked back to the church without looking behind him. He locked himself in his study. He took out his diary, and he wrote the sentence that later made the town whisper for generations. "I have seen where the missing go, and I pray God takes my eyes." He did not sleep that night. The next morning, he burned the page, but he could not burn the memory. Father Horton did not leave his room for 2 days. He kept the curtains closed. He prayed until his throat ached. He covered the lantern with cloth, because even its light reminded him of the cellar. The image of the bodies would not leave him. Their open eyes, their twitching fingers, and above all, the shape moving in the dark behind them. By the third night, a knock came at the church door. He opened it and saw the sheriff. Behind him stood 3 men holding rifles. Their faces were tight with fear. They looked at Father Horton as if he had become part of the problem. The sheriff said another child was missing. A boy named Samuel, 9 years old, disappeared near the woods. The sheriff asked the priest to come with them. He said the townspeople trusted him. He said the search needed the one person who knew the land well enough to guide them. Father Horton almost told him the truth. About the cellar. About the preserved bodies. About the creature in the corner. But he could not force the words out. His voice died in his throat. The sheriff put his hand on the priest's shoulder and said they needed him. Father Horton nodded. They moved into the forest with lanterns. There was no moon that night. Only the soft sound of boots sinking into pine needles. The deeper they walked, the heavier the air became. Every tree seemed to bend inward. Every shadow seemed to shift. An hour passed, then 2. They found nothing. But Father Horton heard it again. That faint breathing. The same sound he had heard behind the church. Slow. Wet. Almost human. But not human. He stopped walking. The sheriff asked what was wrong. Father Horton pointed ahead, toward the old roots. A tree that hid the cellar. The place he never wanted to see again. The men followed his gesture, and raised their lanterns high. They reached the roots. The earth still showed the marks of his digging, though he had tried to cover them. One of the men asked if the priest had been there recently. His voice trembled. The priest told them to be careful, told them to stay back, but they had already seen the disturbed soil. The sheriff ordered the men to dig. Father Horton whispered that they must not open it. He said it as firmly as he could, but the sheriff only stared at him with suspicion. The latch appeared. Cold metal, unmistakable. One man wiped the soil with his sleeve and swallowed hard. The sheriff pulled the door open. The cold air rushed upward. The lantern flames bent inward as if pulled. The men leaned over the opening, shining their lights down the stairs. Nothing moved. The cellar looked empty from above. Father Horton knew that was impossible. The sheriff told the men to go down. The first man refused. The second man argued. The third man climbed halfway down the stairs before he froze in place. He whispered that something was breathing. The sheriff snapped at him to continue. He stepped down and reached the floor. His lantern lit the walls. There were no bodies. Father Horton's stomach tightened. His hands shook. The shelves were empty. The stone was bare. The wooden supports showed deep marks, like something had torn itself free. The priest asked the man what he saw. The man said he saw nothing. The sheriff ordered the other two men inside. They climbed down with fear in their eyes. Their lanterns swung side to side. Still nothing. The cellar was not only empty. It felt used. The air carried a stale warmth, as if something had recently moved through it. Father Horton could not think clearly. Something in his mind refused to understand. The bodies could not leave on their own. They had not been alive. They had not been, he stopped thinking. The air in the cellar changed. One of the men shouted, not a scream, a warning. Their lanterns burst at the same time, not shattered, not dropped, extinguished, as if a hand had closed over them. The cellar went black. A sound rose from the darkness. A low moan, followed by another, then a third. The preserved bodies were not there, but the voices were. The sheriff called their names. The men answered, but their voices shook. They moved blindly in the dark. Something moved with them. Heavy footsteps, slow dragging. A long exhale. The first man screamed. The second man fired his rifle. The sound exploded inside the cellar. The third man scrambled up the stairs, eyes wide with terror. He shouted that something had grabbed him. Something cold, something strong. The sheriff reached down to pull him out. The man climbed up quickly, clawing at the steps. He was halfway out when his body jerked downward. He shouted. The sheriff grabbed his arm. The priest grabbed the sheriff. The lantern above them shook. The man screamed again. A deep pull dragged him downward. The sheriff held on with both hands. His knuckles turned white. Father Horton shouted his name. The cellar growled. The sheriff lost his grip. The man vanished into the dark. The sheriff fell back, choking on fear. He told the priest to run. But Father Horton did not move. His eyes stared at the darkness below. Something climbed the stairs, not fast, slow, deliberate, measured steps. The lantern light flickered. A hand appeared at the top step, gray skin, torn fingernails, the hand of someone who had been dead for months. Then another hand. Then the face. Emily. Her eyes were the same as the day he found her, open, watching him. But her mouth was different. It hung open, pulled wider by something behind her. Not a scream, not a breath, something using her body. Behind her, deeper in the cellar, something else shifted. Something tall. Something that had waited in the far corner. The creature stepped into the frame of the stairs. Its long arms hung near the floor. Its head bent sideways, as if studying the man above. Father Horton dropped the lantern. Darkness surged upward. He ran. The sheriff ran behind him. The forest swallowed their steps. The trees seemed to lean closer. The air felt wrong, heavy, thick. The priest heard branches breaking behind them. They did not stop until they reached the church. They slammed the door shut. They pushed benches against it. They locked it and kneeled on the cold tiles. The sheriff asked what they had awakened. The priest said nothing. He only looked down at his hands. They were shaking so violently he could not hold his rosary. The sheriff told him the town must be told. Father Horton said no. His voice broke on the word, because the truth was worse than anything he could say aloud. The cellar had been full. The bodies had been held in place, preserved. But by what now they were free, all of them. The next morning, the sheriff was gone. His rifle found near the woods, his hat torn, no tracks, no body. Father Horton opened the church and found claw marks on the front door. Not human, not animal. 3 deep lines carved into the wood, as if something had tested the strength of the barrier. Father Horton wrote his last diary entry that night, the same one the town still whispers about. I have seen where the missing go, and I have seen what follows them home. He closed the book. He locked the church doors for the final time. Then he walked into the woods with a lantern. He did not return.